Hello, everybody. Today's November 27th, 2023. I'm Dr. Randy Bach. I'm honored to have not just any Lou Perez, but the Lou Perez. I was hunting for various Lou Perez's, and I found this one. And since he seems to be the genuine article, I'm honored to have him on. I'm actually reading his book, and it's brilliant, as is the man himself, imaginative, wonderful comedian, and an excellent writer. So, can you tell us a little about yourself?
Yeah, well, thank you, Randy. I think most people will know me from my first appearance on your podcast. This is my second time on here. Thanks for having me back. Have you had anybody on 2 times, or are they all one night stands for you?
No, I've had a number of people on twice. I've had the illustrious Marc Girardeau. I've had Jay Bhattacharya on thricely. David Bell, perhaps 3 times. A lot of them, those 3 are kind of COVID related and during the pandemic, and spouters of interesting, useful, and wonderful information, brave men. But I've had some other doublers. We'll get to that. I've had Hugh McCarthy on twice. He's a brilliant educator in Northern Ireland. And now you. I go Wilfred Riley twice. And I met him through you and Charles Love, whom I hope to have on again as well.
Yeah, those guys are great. They have their Cut the Bull podcast that I'm lucky to be, I guess, kind of a co-host every now and then.
Yeah, it's great stuff.
Yeah, it's funny when I'm asked to be like a co-host, because I'm like, I told Charles this. I'm like, you guys are excellent just on your own, like just talking with each other. Like I could just sit back and just listen to them chat. So I'm very fortunate they bring me in every now and then for a a little I don't know, little Lou Perez.
Yeah, no, it's great. Your book is on the death of comedy, and fortunately, I mean, from what I can tell, you're still alive. And I want people to go out and buy this book. We'll get to that in a little bit. But comedy's gone through some tough times. I suppose because people wanted it to be something else. They don't want it to be the thing itself. Laura Ingraham, I believe, 30 years ago, wrote a book, Shut Up and Sing. She'd gone to a Barbra Streisand concert. She'd paid top dollar for one of Barbra Streisand's innumerable farewell tour concerts. And she, paid the equivalent of $500 to $800, or $1,000, like a Taylor Swift ticket. And Barbra Streisand regaled people and with politics, a good fraction of the time, spent a half an hour doing it. It's like, and so she wrote this essay or book, whatever, and shut up and sing. Like, do your thing, do your thing, and leave politics outside of it. And that seems to be a problem that everybody seems to have. It's like, if I were doing, one kind of medical exam and I just couldn't stop talking about X, Y, and Z. It's like, get the object out of my ear, fix my sore throat. Maybe we'll have a beer later, but probably not. What is the death of comedy?
Well, on the front of, Shut Up and Sing, I think that, all celebrities should keep their opinion to themselves unless they agree with me, in which case they need to use their platform to espouse our shared values and to save America. I mean, that's always, how it is. I mean, I haven't followed Laura Ingram's, career very closely, but I'm sure, anytime Scott Baio says something she agrees with, or Kevin Sorbo, she's, all about, jumping on the Chachi. And what was Sorbo? Was he Hercules at some point? So I think there's something, there's something hypocritical about that. But, I also wonder sometimes if I actually had like a really big audience, like I can't imagine what it must be like to be a goddess like, Barbra Streisand. Would I kind of get drunk off of that power and want to use, felt like it was my duty in a way, to spout off on politics. Well, I remember hearing this one story about Barbra Streisand where she was in an elevator, I guess like with her security, and somebody came into the elevator and said, "Oh my God, Barbara," and she just like turned her back completely to the person and just stared at the wall. I forget where I heard that. I don't know if that was on like the Howard Stern show or something like that. So I don't even, I can't even imagine, being even like an inch more famous than I am, where I would, do that to another human being. But I'm willing to get there and to try and to see what what could happen.
I kind of want to, you remind me, given the self-promotion of your diversity program. Could you discuss your diversity program, how you want to diversify the airwaves or whatever we call them these days?
Oh, yeah, I think my biggest move for diversity is that I want there to be more of me everywhere, So I think, until I am literally represented myself, then, representation, we're just not there yet. Now if that involves decolonizing, then we got to do it. We got to decolonize and get Lou Perez everywhere, or throw up any other word you need. But yeah, maybe it's something, where, because I am, sort of quote unquote in showbiz, where unless I see my ideas represented or me represented, I don't feel like the work is being done. But in a sort of like my whole comedy career has been very much a DIY, if you want to, in response to the DEI, it's a DIY. And a big part of that is I've never been very good at auditioning. So the prospect of auditioning for other people's projects and getting them, we're kind of a little more far off than I think a lot of other actors. And I came up in the comedy system of like the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater, where you would produce your own independent shows, in this theater, and you were constantly workshopping stuff. And the reality was, unless somebody, I couldn't rely on anybody to make work for me. I had to make work for myself. So, 20 plus years of that, it's almost like I can't even, take the time to, stop and say, hey, there should be more people with my last name up on that stage or in that movie. It's like, no, I'm trying to work on my own stuff. I'm trying to get, my own stuff made. So,
speaking of your last name, that seems to be kind of a key or window or whatever metaphor, analogy, into something. You use the word colonization and so forth. There's kind of various irony that some of the quote unquote marginalized, who have this last name are seen as the victims, and yet you point out in your book that it's the colonizer's name, the Perez's and whatnot. And you have this interesting chapter on the getting rid of the Washington Redskins, it's pretty funny stuff, because frankly the Redskins and a lot of these teams were used as a glorification and of the warrior spirit of those peoples, the chiefs and whatnot. But you have an encounter with a waiter down San Antonio or Austin, Texas?
Austin, yeah.
Yeah, I was not there, so Austin. Tell us a little. I don't know if you feel like indulging in that on the Perez last name, but Perez.
Yeah, sure. So, my dad is from Argentina. He came to the United States in the late 1970s. He's now an American citizen. So I guess I'm hoping that will expunge the ways that he got here and make it okay. So I hope my dad, I'm not going to get my dad in trouble for anything, but my dad came here, didn't speak English, has a really thick accent. It's an amazing accent.
Well, not in Argentina, he doesn't.
Right, exactly. Yeah, he needs to go down there to sound normal, basically. Although it's fun, just a little segue on that. I've been fortunate enough to have gone on 3 trips to Argentina. Once when I think I was in like the first grade, the second time when I was in either high school, and then the third time when I was in grad school. So it was really, nice getting to go down there. And one of the last trips that I went on, there was a local kid who had nice local kid who had been studying English. So it was his chance to, practice English with me. And he was telling me that speaking to my dad, he said, it's weird because your dad sounds Venezuelan and he uses Mexican words. So it's like, some kind of, change had happened in the way that my dad speaks in his accent. So even, I guess, in Argentina, he might have a little funny accent.
Oh, no
and,
doubt.
and he's also not from, he's not from Buenos Aires, which is like, the Paris of South America. My dad's from San Miguel de Tucumán, which is kind of like, he called it like the Mississippi Delta of Argentina. I don't know if that works out, correctly, but their country, they're known for headbutts. They're a little, what they call it, bruto, which is like a little, little tough backwards,
Yeah.
So anyway, that's who my dad is, and I love my dad, and I'm very fortunate to have grown up, with a dad like him, to look up to, especially in my formative years. So my wife and I, we were in Austin. I was doing a gig for Young Americans for Liberty. So when you're a libertarian and a comedian, you often do gigs for other libertarians and college groups and that sort of thing. So we were down in Austin. I was performing, and at the hotel, we had brunch, and it came time to pay the check, and the waiter came up to me, and he had my card and my credit card, and he said, "Your name is Perez?" Like my last name, and I said, "Yeah, it is." He's like, "My name is Perez," and I looked up at him, and yeah, he looks, Latin, of Latin extraction, of some sort, maybe Mexican, maybe Central American. I don't know. And I was like, yeah, it's a very, very popular last name. And then he said, "But you don't look like a Perez." And I was there with my wife, and it was like just an awkward interaction. And I said something like, "Oh, well, you should see my dad," or something, something like that, some offhand throwaway line. And then the whole time, my wife and I were just like, man, that was just so awkward. Like you're a waiter, and basically like trying to decipher who I am as if it's a lie or something. And I wish that I had come back at him with a different response where I would have said, "No, I look like the men who came here and conquered your people and gave you my last name. That's what I look like," which would probably be true. If we were, I don't know if maybe he did like a 23andMe and he figured it out.
Funny thing. I mean,
yeah,
I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole, but the Americas, Central and South America, are all different. They're different parts and pockets and whatnot. In Argentina, I don't know if they didn't have as many Indian tribes or whatever as in the tropical areas, but it's a different demographic, pretty much. In Mexico, there were a lot, of the Aztec Empire, and what you're seeing as Mexican is kind of a mestizo, kind of mixed and whatnot. You don't really see it as much in Argentina. There's a funny retort from the Argentine soccer team. Do you ever see this?
Oh yeah, Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. Do you want to take it?
I want to make sure we're talking the same thing.
So somebody posted, about the Argentine national soccer team, that they're all white.
Yeah, lack of diversity on the
lack of diversity on Argentine team, and I don't know who on the team or whatever. Somebody responded, "It's like we are a country, not a Disney movie."
It's great. Yeah. I don't know who responded with that, but
yeah, it's like, if you look at the Senegal team, it's like, why don't they have any, I don't know, Polish people on it? I mean,
yeah. Well, that article, I remember seeing that article, and this was, short, the next day or the same day that Argentina beat France in the World Cup, and it it was quite possibly the greatest soccer game ever played. I mean, it was, on the edge of your seat for the entire game. And I remember watching it in my house, and my youngest son is notoriously just you can't. He doesn't rest. He doesn't nap. And one thing that he doesn't do, he doesn't nap on you. He just never does that. But this time around, when it came to extra minutes, overtime, and the impending free kick, that's when my wife was able to transfer him to my chest on the couch. So I had to watch. So say you're the TV. I had to watch the TV like this with this sleeping demon who never sleeps, and having to and when they won, I had tears streaming down my face, and the baby was still asleep. So it was
wow, that should be an Olympic event.
I know.
So the Silent Library was some kind of game show. You ever see this thing?
I think I had seen something like that where people are shocking you and stuff. They
do crazy things and tell jokes and whatever, and you have to maintain your silence.
Yeah,
so that could have been a category right there.
Yeah, and it was just an incredible game. I mean, I kind of want to rewatch it now. It was just just a fantastic game. And then the article that comes out is like a paint by numbers. How can we make this shit about race? And what's so funny about it is because in the sport of soccer, I mean, the amount of times that, say for example, when France wins the World Cup, you have these people saying like, oh, France won the World Cup, you better thank all the Africans you have on the team. And it's like, no, but the team views themselves as French. They are French. That the players view themselves as French, and that you have people where even if it's a team that is diverse, it needs to be portrayed in this neo-colonialist way, as opposed to, isn't it incredible that this, however big the roster is, however deep the roster is, was able to get together and play the game of the century. So I think if anyone picks up my book and they'll notice that I enjoy picking apart, that sort of aspect of the culture nowadays. I think it's fun to make fun of it. For sure.
Yeah, the fables or the foibles of fables.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
So I'm going to segue to Idiocracy, which is another chapter. I love the movie. Maybe I'm an idiot. But can you tell us your pathway to Idiocracy, as late as it might have been? And why is it you don't see it as I don't know, maybe it didn't ring true for you, or you just kind of felt an urge to, keep it from happening in the future?
Yeah, what I'm trying to think back. I think one of the issues is that I watched Idiocracy very late. So I'm so late to so many.
Yeah, I'm only about 3 years ago. So I was pretty late also.
There's so many touchstones in the culture that I am sometimes decades late to. I think I was probably 20 years late to the Sopranos, to Deadwood. I think the only show that I really watched along, as it was going along, was something like Breaking Bad.
Mm-hmm.
But normally Breaking Bad, I probably would have gotten into it 10 years from now, and then been like, oh my God, this is amazing. I have a buddy of mine, my longtime comedy partner and best friend, Greg Burke. And like when I was watching The Sopranos for the first time, I'm texting him like, oh my God, can you believe this? And he's like, yeah, man, I watched it 20 years ago. It's like, you're just watching it now. You're just watching The Wire. So I think when I caught Idiocracy, I was probably a little, not only late to the game, but I had also changed as well. And I think I talk about that in the book, where if I had seen it when I was younger and a lot more arrogant, and I would think like, oh man, yeah, all the freaking stupid people are breeding. Like, they need me to get in there and do my thing. But as I've gotten older and I start, uh, questioning a lot of, am I smart? Do I know what I'm talking about? Maybe I'm an idiot. I think I started to maybe identify more with the dipshits who shouldn't be breeding. I don't know. It was something along those lines, and I think from a craft standpoint, it was like an hour and 20-minute long sketch. Really, it seemed like it was sort of like a kind of like a one note sort of thing. And I think Mike Judge is brilliant. I think he really is incredible. But it didn't hit as well as I think it would.
It's too long. It's too long, and the basic joke is there. However, sometimes jokes are really good when they're repeated. That's kind of the juvenile part. But
yeah, and it's pretty amazing too. Like he was, I watched the interview with Mike Judge where Idiocracy apparently had made quite a few predictions. One of the predictions that they made was the popularity of Crocs, like the shoe, and I mean, if you needed to pick a fucking shoe that was going to be that just bust out Idiocracy, it's definitely Crocs. These just ugly, stupid looking things.
Not only that, but they're just so lazy. I was at an angel meeting because I'm an angel, descended from heaven. No, it's just kind of an investor group, and there's a guy pitching, and he's young-ish, late 30s, whatever, and he's wearing kind of a lumberjack shirt, a sweater over that, but the lumberjack shirt is like sticking out over his pants, and his pants are like, he didn't make like any effort, or the effort he made was to kind of fit in this kind of generic I'm nobody kind of realm. Like he did not put the effort into, kind of look nice for the group. And we're, older than he is on average. And it's like, you got to like know your audience. And I'm not saying anyone else felt the way I did, but Crocs seemed to be like the shoe version of that. It's like, I could probably put something on, but it's kind of, there's been this inside outing of the world where people just, wear their, like literally they wear their pajamas out, this kind of like a weird kind of, people say clown world, but it's kind of a buffoonery out there. Even the mailman, like we're in a leafy suburb here, and the male humans used to come around and dress as such. And now you're lucky if they're wearing anything. Like,
oh yeah. And it sort of gets my my antenna up where I'm like, who is this? Who's coming in? Who has the nerve to step to my front door? Oh, okay, they're carrying envelopes or carrying packages. Okay, they're safe. I don't have to worry about them.
Yeah. This is a tiny little routine. So these two guys with a long contractor's ladder. I suppose it's weird. It's an expandable ladder, yet it's contracting. Anyway, they take this ladder and they get into anything. They can walk into any theater, into any office, because they're just carrying a ladder.
Right.
And this is also the kind of genesis of one of the Sherlock Holmes episodes on video. These people are invisible; you don't really see them.
Well, on the guy who the angel at the angel investor meeting who's dressed like shit. I mean, I think that was one of the things about who's the Sam Bankman-Fried, right? Where it's like, oh, we could trust this guy because he doesn't give a shit about his appearance. As opposed to like, you take someone like Steve Jobs, like, yeah, he wore the same outfit, but it looked nice. I mean, it looked decent. Yeah, he was careful about it. And that's something that I wish I need to start dressing better. And I actually need to start dressing like my dad. Like my wife says, like my dad dresses really well. Yeah. He and my mom like work together, to put together his outfits.
That's a funny thing. I've seen, I've done a lot of medical work in my life, and along the way you have to kind of be reasonably attentive to psychological signals and ostensibly, try to help people in that regard. And one of the I don't want to be this episode's not about me, but one of the things that I actually learned the most from was the dog whisperer, and what's his name? Millan, Carlos Millan or something like that. Felix Millan, whatever his first name.
He's one of my people, I think. In some regard.
And that's why I didn't say Millan. he had this episode where the posture of the dog, some dogs doing bad things, whatever bad dog things are, pissing around, whatever, and he basically made a double leash so the tail had to be up at the same time you're walking the dog. You're holding the neck, but the tail is up, and the dog's like, when my tail is up, I'm happy, or I'm proud, and he couldn't be sheepish, whatever, with his tail between his legs and whatnot. And the dog's behavior changed, and this was, along the lines of like making your bed and all these kind of like, Jordan Peterson-ish, that admiral guy, they changed the way I did things, I started making my bed, and B, I just thought about those secondary things about how you present and try to bring that. I was doing at certain points a lot of narcotic de-addiction, and people come in, frazzled, and they look that, and just getting them to do the simple, achievable things of dressing better, saying thank you to certain people, or I'm sorry, I was wrong. Those are like really basic, little, kind of kiddie steps, but very helpful. You actually bring that up, getting back to your book, about the I was wrong, or I was. People don't really, they don't say they're sorry. They don't say they're wrong. What's the better world for us, Lou?
What's the better world for us? Well, it is interesting how I have a lot of respect for people who admit when they got something wrong and are trying to improve their lives. I think there's quite you bring up addiction. I've spoken to a number of people who are in recovery who have really turned their lives around, and it's almost like having been an addict, they're at a point where they are able to admit even the just the worst things that they did, and to try to make up for it in any way they can. And a lot of them, there are things that they just can't make up for, and they have to carry that. But I think there's an element of just self-betterment, acknowledging where you messed up, how you could do better, and trying to do that. And I feel like with social media in particular, I don't know if it's something about social media or it's just revealed something about people, but I think most people are not concerned with the truth. Most people just really don't care. And I mean, you could see, over the past month and a half and more than that in particular, with the online conversation, if there is one, about Israel and Gaza, the amount of stuff that's just lies that are spread, then debunked, and then you see somebody else spread the exact same thing, whether it's videos or memes and stuff, and it's like, I don't think a lot of the people who are spreading misinformation, disinformation, they don't give a shit whatsoever. And it's sort of I don't know how you fix that on such a macro level, as opposed to just holding yourself up to to bigger standards, higher standards, excuse me.
Well, it's an interesting point. I mean, as far as like having a better society, there have to be some kind of rules and guidance and a hierarchy in a sense. And it's a weird irony that we're taking a lot of that away from the people who theoretically might have a path up. And to that point, I'd like you actually, as one of the brave, intrepid, literate people who I'm not sure you're actually literate to have gone through Ibram Kendi's book, but given the writing style, but I have it here someplace, and I tried it. I gave up. I also gave up on Karl Marx's works as well. I found them, inchoate ravings. But can you tell us, how the rules are changing? How is it? Okay, I don't know if you got a question yet, but basically, my feeling is that it's hard enough to succeed in the world, knowing what the rules are. If the rules keep changing all the time, and so that you might be better able to advance yourself as a victim than as an achiever, we have all these basic perverse incentives. And then on top of it, we have this layering that if you're of the wrong color or whatever, the right color, your works are going to be prejudged and determined according to a standard that has never been operative before in history. So is there a question there, A? And B, if you can find the question there, can you discuss it?
Well, I think a while back, our noble doctor Kendi, given name Henry Rogers, I believe that was his before he changed it to Ibram X Kendi. There were a number of these high profile cases of academics in particular who had pretended to be Native American as a way to gain admission into colleges or grad programs, that sort of thing. And I'm sure some of them got scholarships too. And Kendi asks, why in the world would anybody want to pretend to be Native American? It's like, what do you look to gain from that? And I think he ended up like erasing, deleting the tweet at some point. But here is a guy whose whole his whole philosophy is grounded on this idea that if there's any inequity, then it's due to racism. Any inequity at all, like everything falls down to it's you're either racist or anti-racist. There's no no middle ground. So if there's any inequity, it must be due to racism. And yet and with that is this idea that if you're a person of color, you were consistently the victim. And yet here he was pointing out a one particular place where being a person of color, in this case being Native American, actually helps you succeed.
Well,
and that kind of goes against.
You have to ask Elizabeth Warren whether that's true, but carry on.
Right. I really want to try that cookbook that she had. What was it? I think it was like Pow Wow something.
Pow Wow Chow.
Pow Wow Chow. I mean, that is just that's amazing. But yeah, the Kendi, the Kendi stuff. I guess what most recently he managed to squander $10 million that was given to him to be used for some kind of scholarly research at Boston University.
That's the silver lining for me. That money given for a lot of these marginally scrupulous concepts wind up in the hands of marginally scrupulous people, and they invest them in unscrupulous events, and they somewhat dilute their overall message. That's the positive for me.
Yeah.
But it's kind of funny. He leaned into this name change to embrace something, talk about it. He was born Barack Obama, but then she married another Marxist economics professor named Satoru, and then he went off to Indonesia. That's where he got the kind of madrasa education a little bit. And then for a long time he was Barry Satoru, because that's who the dad his only his stepdad, I guess, but he never met the other one. So that was his physical father presence. And for a long time he was Barry Satoru, I believe, through high school and whatnot. At some point he decided to do the Obama name, and as well in this Garrow book, and it's mentioned that he actually had a girlfriend. I think she was anyway, there's a Caucasian girlfriend, Chinese girlfriend, and he felt he loved them, but he had to get rid of them because he would not be accepted authentically unless he had an African American descent wife. And so Michelle Obama is actually a diversity hire, essentially. which is funny. I mean, it's also sad, but it worked. I got to give the guy credit. So I don't know if that's in the works for you right now.
In my book, I write, whatever white privilege I have, I don't want to give it up, and that's why I married a blonde. I want to soak up all that white privilege that I can with the Obamas. I mean, that I know so little about their history, and I guess I'm a little bit of a normie that when I see he and he and Michelle together, I think they look like they're pretty happy, and
Oh, no doubt.
they're doing a good job.
Think things can work. I mean,
Yeah.
there was that mass wedding of the Moonies in the 70s. Tens of thousands of people got married. They had never met each other. And apparently the marriage track record of that cohort is better than average. I'm not saying it's perfect, but people, if they decide they want to do something together, people can do great things. So I kind of would like to segue to your comedy career and how you chose it. I know you got a master's. So was that a master's in Marxian studies, as in the Marx Brothers?
Creative writing. I got a master's in creative writing. So I went to NYU as an undergrad, where I think like a lot of people wasn't too sure what I wanted to do. So I basically was like an English major. I went to Gallatin, which is a school for individualized study. So originally, first year, I'm boring the shit out of everybody, but first year, College of Arts and Science. And then I transferred to Gallatin to do individualized study, where I was able to basically do like an English creative writing major. And then I ended up going to grad school at City College to get my MFA in creative writing. And, for I don't know how many years now, there's been a lot of talk, obviously, and debate over the student loan debt and canceling student loan debt. And the best thing that happened to me was that I was rejected from Columbia University and New York University for their graduate program, their MFA program, because it would have been so expensive to, do those programs and to graduate grad school just with all that debt on me. So going to City College ended up being not only a great financial move because it was, just so much cheaper, but I really got to meet and work with a lot of great writers, and I had a great time there. But while I was going to grad school, I was still doing comedy. So I was doing sketch comedy. I hadn't tried stand up yet. I'd always wanted to do stand up, but I think it was just always like a little nervous. Like I always sort of viewed stand up as just this thing where like kind of like was it the Pantheon or the Parthenon of the gods of George Carlin and Eddie Murphy and Richard Pryor. It's sort of like I couldn't believe that it was possible that I could do anything like that. And not saying that I'm going to do anything like those guys, but even just getting up on a stage the way that they did seemed just so so foreign to me. But so while I was in grad school and studying literary fiction and writing literary fiction, I was performing sketch comedy and producing videos for YouTube, and it was really funny. It was really interesting to see just the difference approach to the arts, where the goal of us performing live sketch comedies, we wanted to pack out a theater and make people laugh. We wanted to put videos on YouTube and get as many views as we could. And then you have like this literary fiction where you'd spend months writing a story, getting notes, rewriting it, and then you'd send it off to these literary journals, and you wouldn't hear back from them for months. So you turn around, you're like, oh man, it's been like 8 months since I wrote this story. Oh, it's been rejected from all these literary journals, but it's been accepted by this one journal, and this is amazing. They're going to run this, and your payment is like $20 and maybe like 5 copies of the issue, and their circulation is maybe 1,000. So the idea that they print 1,000 copies, say they sell half of them 500, and then out of that half, what percentage of people even read your story, and it was a funny look at at the arts and entertainment, and sort of like what your goals are. Like, do you want to write stories that aren't read, basically, or do you want to do stuff that you're able to get your voice out there and people are actually gonna see it? So I think even in my snooty literary days, there was something I still had kind of like a I don't know, I'm not going to say like a circus element, like a really, I don't know, man of the people still, like,
Right. Well, it's got a populist theme, and I think it's also a popular theme, and you get your stuff out. Yeah, the intro of your book is interesting. First chapter, you talk about, and I kind of want to, as a sub question, I wanted you to get into like the Great Gatsby, Hannah Gadsby versus say Dave Chappelle, the approaches to comedy and bringing tragedy into comedy. I grew up with the National Lampoon, and and they had this column or story one points to the tragedians instead of the comedians, and they're basically trying to make each other like weep instead of laugh. And so each story is more gruesome and horrible. Has comedy become that? And as a intro to that, you begin the chapter like with people saying, what is comedy going to be under Trump, or and so forth. And the answer is like, what did it have to be, or how are we going to mobilize comedy against Trump? I mean, nobody thought about that under Obama. Nobody's thinking about that under Biden. The jokes are frankly avoided. To which, it's a rock, paper, scissors world sometimes, intersectionality. One thing is on top of another. Is comedy under politics? And can it thrive?
Yeah, well, I think I know you haven't finished the book yet, but I am pretty hopeful for the future of comedy for a number of reasons. I think for one, the ability that comedians have now to reach audiences is just incredible. I mean, you have comedians who, they've been working years and years on their craft, and then they blow up on TikTok, and now they're able to sell out venues all across the country. There are people able to communicate directly and build an audience, which I think is it's like never before, and there isn't one path anymore too with comedy. So I think it's been really great as far as getting rid of a lot of the gatekeepers,
Mm-hmm.
and with that, you have people who are able to try and do all different kinds of comedy. So like with the Hannah Gatsby thing, and one of the things that I wrote about is that I used to see a lot of comedians who would talk about really messed up things in their lives, but there would be humor and a catharsis there. And if anybody had watched Hannah Gatsby's first Netflix special, Nanette, she spends the last portion of it, I believe it's the last portion of it, talking about this horrific sexual assault that she had undergone, and there's no release there, and there's no humor, there's no jokes, and as a comedian, but also as a fan of comedy, it's sort of like, what are you doing? Like, why would you do that to the people there? It gave her a really good opening for her next special, Douglas, where she said, she's like, I kind of got all that stuff out, in that one special. And if you're here to rehear stuff like that, what's wrong with you? Which I thought was a pretty good, follow up. But that really, colors her whole world. I mean, there's a whole bit where she goes into, talking about, like, she absolutely hates Pablo Picasso, and Pablo Picasso, she talks about how, Pablo Picasso, because of an affair that he had with I believe a 16 or 17-year-old girl. And he said that, she was in her prime and I was in my prime, and, which is, kind of gross, I guess, but this is also like 100 years ago.
Yeah,
it's like different. It was a different time period.
I know. If people had a grandmotherometer or great grandmotherometer, you go back, say, 4 generations, and if your great grandparents didn't marry in their teens or early 20s, I doubt it.
Right.
People didn't wait forever. They didn't have girls going to college and so forth. Total side note, I don't know if you watched basketball, but there's a 21-year-old basketball star, Josh Giddey, Australian, playing for the Oklahoma Thunder, and they're getting him for like having a relationship with a minor. And it's a funny thing because these statutory rape charges can be very serious, but if you're 17.9 years old, you can have sex with a 17.6-year-old girl, or vice versa, and there's no charges. But if you're 18.2, you think as an adult or whatever, technically that's statutory rape if you're with an underage girl. And I just think people kind of don't really parse this well enough. Between consenting quasi adults. If it's a 9-year-old, different story. Right. Anyway.
So I think, and if people listening haven't checked out Hannah Gadsby's special, somehow Pablo Picasso, Harvey Weinstein, and Donald Trump are all related,
right.
And it's like,
but not Bill Clinton and not Jeffrey Epstein.
Right. Yeah, I don't think she knows about Epstein. Yeah, or at least it seemed that way. When during the during the special. So
I guess we didn't weave in Dave Chappelle. We'll drop him for now. Maybe move to Chris Rock, and you have kind of a piece on his use of the N word, and his differentiation in the Black community. That as per Thomas Sowell. There's this kind of white person romanticization of Black crime. He has a book. I think it's was it like
Black Rednecks?
Yeah, white liberals, Black rednecks, or Black, whichever one is named first. And it's a series of essays, and it's fascinating, and I loved it. I've read it 8 times. I've given away more times than that as an informative book, but. People in those communities do not benefit from some of the kind of woke policies that, if you supposedly, turning the justice system inside out to release felons, because they're BIPOC, Black, whatever, you're not necessarily helping that person's community. You may be helping that guy commit more crimes, but, who against whom is he going to be perpetrating those crimes? And Chris Rock brings that up in some of his work, early work and whatnot. Is he a model for pointed comedy? And can you only say that if you're of that particular ethnicity, color, etc.?
Yeah. In the book, the chapter's the Chris Rock challenge. I think that's what I call it. And in that chapter, I talk about in particular Chris Rock's bit. Was it niggas versus Black people? Mm-hmm. So in it, I use I write the N word quite a bit because I'm, quoting him. And then if any of you are interested in actually hearing me say it more than just now, you can purchase my audiobook where I read every single one of those N words. And basically, what I'm pointing out. Oh, there we go. Nice, bringing it up on the screen.
This is Chris Rock saying this, everybody, not me.
That's right. Although, Randy does an amazing Chris Rock impression that I'm sure he'll dive into. Right.
I actually can do a decent one.
There we go.
But I'm going to avoid it.
Yeah. So, I think it's a classic stand-up bit. It might be Chris Rock's most famous stand-up bit. I think it's up there with, George Carlin's 7 dirty words you can't say on television. I think it's one of those bits that, when you think of a comedian, you think of a comedian, it's like they're connected forever. And it was done, we getting like over 20 years ago, 30 years ago, maybe. And if you were to break it down, it sounds very much like a conservative screed, it's pretty commonsensical. It's something that, if you were a kid growing up in the 90s, regardless of if you were white, Hispanic, Jewish, Black, it would be like, we hate, this subset of people, not the people themselves, but the behavior. It's like, this isn't behavior that's worthy of praise. It's something that we shouldn't we shouldn't applaud. It's a bit where Mr. Barry Soetoro, Barack Obama, referenced it when he was, I believe, on the campaign trail, and it's just it's funny to look at where we are now. We're looking back at it. It is something that would get you labeled a conservative for saying. And one of the arguments that I make in the book is comedy is very much about taking risks. And even at the time, Chris Rock, even though he is black, he took a risk by putting this stuff out there. And from what I hear, it took him a really long time to craft it, to put it together, and it didn't always go well, depending on the the audience. And ultimately, it's a risk too that however many decades later, you're going to be called a conservative, an Uncle Tom, or something. And as a comedian, it's like, man, I hope one day I'm able to have a quintessential piece like that will outlive me, and that people will argue about and hopefully still laugh about.
Yeah. So as far as actual laughing, you have I think similar. I don't indulge probably as much as you do, but I try to follow certain comedians, and some things I won't be able to turn off if I see it. Big Norm Macdonald fan. I like Bill Burr quite a bit, and lately I've been listening to Mark Normand when he shows up. And I don't agree with all these guys all the time, and not necessarily even politically either. Not that it matters, but Mark Normand has some great truths, and he's he's able to kind of puncture both sides. And at one point, he's talking about like the things he used to be able to see. He grew up in I think New Orleans, and I guess he was a minority as a white kid in that school. And he's been told now he can't say this and that. And it's like when he grew up, he said, which was not ages ago. They would say, "Hey, you can't jump." It's like, "Hey, you guys can't swim," and there's kind of also kind of a feminist bubble he punctures as well at various times. Anyway, so as per that, what are the comedians that you follow? Who are the comedians you follow, and what are they getting right?
What are they getting right? Well, I'm happy you bring up Mark Normand, because he's a great joke writer. He loves wordplay too. There's actually a really great clip. I think I saw it on Instagram. Norman was on the Joe Rogan Experience, and it's just this like mashup of Mark being unable to control himself from wordplay throughout the episode. He's great. I mean, let's see. Ryan Long. Really like Ryan Long a lot. Kyle Dunnigan is great. There's so many people like really doing, just, awesome stuff. I find myself, less following, not as many comedians as just like, commentators. I feel like one of the great things about podcasting, it's like opened up the world to people who aren't, comedians per se, but have, funny, inventive, commentary. I think like Michael Malice is great. He has a podcast called You're Welcome that I've been a guest on twice. A guest on it twice as well. That's a two-peat. Brendan O'Neill. I really like Brendan O'Neill with Spiked. Who else am I always listening to? I've been into. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
You listen to Andrew Klavan at all?
I haven't listened to Andrew Klavan in a while. He did a while back. It's still available online. He did a really great talk about Huckleberry Finn that made me want to reread the book. Yeah.
No, he's along your lines, creative writing and whatnot. But his cold openings for his now weekly, used to do daily monologues, are some of them just like blowing my socks off, and that's a hard thing to do because they're under my shoes.
And
So,
I was recently on Greg Gutfeld
oh yeah,
last week.
congratulations.
Yeah,
Bravo.
thank you. Second time on Greg Gutfeld. And he's great. He's a really, really good dude. Like, he's been incredibly helpful by, having me on and promoting my book and stuff. Like, he doesn't have to do any of that, folks. And yet he does. So I'm, very, very honored. And during his monologue, the last time I was on, in particular, there were some really, really good one-liners in there. One of them, in particular, was about was it Donald Trump had just gone through, he had like his annual checkup, and they were, posting the results of it, and then he said something like, Joe Biden's, annual autopsy. Got the results of it, and he did it. He did it much better. So yeah, there's a lot of there's so much stuff going, like so much good stuff out there, that it could be a little, it could be tough to keep up with everything.
So I had George Gilder on twice. He's a futurist economist. He's in his 80s, lives out in Western Mass.
How much future does he have left, do you think?
Good point. That's why he's so expert. He's had so much future in the past.
Right.
But he's an economist of sorts, and brilliant guy. You should read his books. He has Life After Capitalism, I think, is the latest book. And short answer is, life after capitalism is capitalism. By the way, if people want to get rid of it, we're always going to revert to something like that. But his point is that real wealth is knowledge, and knowledge is only harvested or mined out of tectonic plates of debate. So you don't get knowledge by sitting skeptically, watching your own belly button. You get it. You get it through interacting and hearing your ideas challenged, and then having to reformulate, and anneal them, under flame and fire, just like metals and whatnot. The stronger steel. We seem to have kind of a pampering age right now, which is not necessarily holding people in good stead, because they become ignorant. I think that you were mentioning the October massacre in Israel. A lot of the responses we're seeing are from ignorance, and people are unwilling to even kind of bridge seeing or hearing their own facts and conceptions challenged. And it's, I'm sure you've seen the, gaze for Palestine kind of stuff, and people not really having a concept of what their own behaviors, how those would be treated if the world were all Hamas.
Yeah. Well, I think too, I think a good part of it is ignorance. I think another part of it is a desire to justify some of the most savage desires that people have. So, I mean, there's been times where, there gets to the point with some people where you're like, well, here's footage that, debunks what you just said. And they're like, well, that Israel lied about that. That's made up, So it gets to a point where it's like, well, you're not interested in the truth. You just, you want to justify.
Everything becomes the no true Scotsman fallacy. You know that one?
Yeah.
All right. So we're kind of rounding out our hour here, and I want to give you the floor, as it were, the stage, to promote the book. I'll see if I can pull it up. Before we do that, I just want to have this one quote, I guess, from the early part of the book that we were referencing earlier. What would be the role of comedy under President Trump? What's the role of comedy? I mean, I think it's kind of an interesting point here that, these things have to be on their own. You have to be a good piano player, whether, whoever's president, you have to be a good comedian, and you shouldn't necessarily have one be subservient to the other. But nice job with the book. And let's see if I can find your book up on Amazon. Actually,
it's also, where is it? Right here, too, above my shoulder.
There you go. So here you are on Twitter, and the book here is in the background, I guess. Pull that up. That Joke Isn't Funny Anymore, by Lou Perez, in warrior costume. Are you a culture warrior?
am I a culture warrior? A reluctant, it's like I just want to retire. I want to go, drink Mai Tais. And they just keep bringing me back, man. There's just another war, another fight. I'm the John Rambo of it.
Well, I'm not sure you're going to get that. I'll give you my tie if you want.
Nice.
Um,
Oh, there you go.
yeah.
One thing I'll just ask, if, obviously I appreciate anybody, going and buying the book. If you enjoy it, please head over to Amazon and, give it a 5-star review and, leave some kind words. It really goes a long way. So
I will do that.
Thank you.
Like I said, I'm only 40% through, but
don't read anymore. Don't read anymore. If you like the 40%, just stop there.
I tell people if they want to help support my podcast, they can buy my book. They don't have to read it. Yours is actually funnier than mine, believe it or not. I don't know why. Mine deals with one of the funnier pandemics.
Right. Yeah. Zika, which sounds like such a made-up word. It's a joke word. I mean, basically.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you the pictures are obviously tragic, babies with small heads, and that is not, those such as not to be compatible with understanding even bad comedy or anything much at all. So the stipulation is tragic. If Zika causes microcephaly, bad Zika, bad microcephaly, we don't want that, so forth. But it's never recurred anywhere on Earth since 2015, 2016. I don't want to spend too much time on that.
I mean, I'll just say that if you read my book, there's like a 99% chance you won't get Zika from it. So I can't say there's 100% chance, but you're pretty safe.
Yeah.
Wear a condom just in case. Wear a condom when you're wearing.
Yeah, that was a great line you had. Yeah, I was trying to remember it at the tail end here. Your people, outside wearing masks. You were in Brooklyn Heights during part of COVID, these, what you called intelligent Democrat voters. I don't know if it's an oxymoron, but leave it there. People smart enough and wealthy enough to live in Brooklyn Heights, out there by themselves on a park bench wearing a mask. And you said,
if you're alone in a park wearing a mask, you might as well be masturbating with a condom. So,
yeah, we can call that masturbating.
Masturbating. Nice.
All right. So I'm not sure we want to end specifically on that note. Do you have any other excellent words of wisdom before we go?
Check out thelouperez.com. Sign up for my newsletter. Stay up to date on all the fun stuff I'm doing. So.
All right. Well, I will do that, and I recommend everybody else do. Thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. We're going to say ta-ta to the world.